with faces like lightning, and some so dark that even the bravest spirits tremble to pass through them. This question has haunted seekers for centuries. Is the afterlife a single paradise of eternal rest, or is it a layered reality where light and shadow coexist, where punishment and reward stand side by side? Throughout history, every culture has asked the same question in different ways. What happens when we die? Do we rise to something higher or sink into something lower? Religions around the world describe heaven as a home of peace and justice. But what if there was a man who claimed to have actually seen it, not in visions of poetry, but in journeys so detailed that he described the gates, the rivers, the mountains, and even the prisons hidden inside? That man was Enoch. Enoch is a name that appears briefly in the Bible, but his story expands far beyond those few verses. In the ancient Book of Enoch, which was revered for centuries and preserved in the Ethiopian Bible, he is described as the first human who walked with God so closely that he did not taste death. Instead, he was taken alive into the heavenly realms and shown secrets hidden even from angels. Unlike other prophets, Enoch wasn't only given words to deliver, he was given a tour of the very architecture of the cosmos. He was led by mighty beings into places where the souls of the righteous rest in light, and into caverns where the fallen are bound in chains. He was shown stars that move like soldiers under command, and thrones that blaze with living fire. The Book of Enoch is more than a vision. It's a map of heaven and the unseen world. It paints a picture so rich that it challenges the simple idea of heaven as one faraway kingdom. Instead, it shows a layered universe, filled with order, justice, and mysteries that even now stretch the imagination. This is why the Book of Enoch matters. It's not just another apocryphal text. It is one of the earliest attempts to describe heaven in detail, and it influenced later Jewish, Christian, and even Islamic thought. Early followers of Christ quoted from it. The Dead Sea Scrolls preserved parts of it, and the Ethiopian Church never let it fade into obscurity. For us today, Enoch's story resonates deeply because we are still asking the same questions he asked thousands of years ago. What lies beyond the veil of death? Are we judged instantly, or do we travel through realms? Why does evil seem so strong in this world, and will it ever be punished? Enoch's visions speak to these questions in ways that are both terrifying and comforting. His description of heaven is not only a promise of reward for the righteous, but also a warning of justice for the wicked. Imagine hearing, in a time when people feared the unknown after death, that someone had already walked those roads, seen the waiting places of souls, and stood before the throne of the Eternal One. That is what makes the Book of Enoch powerful. It bridges the human longing for answers with divine revelation. When you read it, you feel like the curtain of the universe is pulled back, just enough for you to glimpse a light that burns brighter than the sun. And this is where our journey begins. Together we will walk through Enoch's visions, one realm at a time. We will see the beauty of heaven, the terror of the prisons, the songs of the angels, and the trembling of the fallen. But before we step into those realms, pause and think. If heaven is truly layered, if there are places of rest and places of judgment, then what does that mean for us now? Does it change the way we live? Does it change the way we think about justice, love, and eternity? This documentary is not just about ancient texts. It's about the oldest human questions. Where do we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? And perhaps most haunting of all, what awaits us when we take our final breath? Now, before we dive deeper into Enoch's heavenly visions, I want to pause and invite you to support this journey. If you are drawn to the wisdom hidden in these ancient scriptures, subscribe to Bible Says right now and help us reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these stories alive and brings hidden truths back into the light. If you feel moved, consider sending us super thanks. It's a way to keep this work going and to help us share these forgotten books with the world. I'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment with your name, your city, and the time you're watching this. Let's see how far around the world Enoch's vision travels today. And if you want to go deeper yourself, check out the description below. You'll find a link to the complete Bible with 88 books, including the Book of Enoch in English translation. It's a treasure of knowledge, preserved through time, waiting for you to read with your own eyes. The gates of heaven, as seen by Enoch, are about to open before us. Stay with me, because its words are so bold and clear that they unsettled religious leaders who wanted to control the story of heaven and earth. The Book of Enoch has always been associated with mystery and controversy. Most Christians in the West are raised with a Bible that has 66 books, and they are unaware that more was preserved in earlier traditions. The Book of Enoch, one of the 88 books that still make up the Ethiopian Bible, is a work that fundamentally alters our understanding of angels, judgment, and the universe's structure. Why then was it omitted from the Bibles that the majority of people today are familiar with? The answer starts in the centuries when the early church was choosing which texts would serve as the foundation of its authority, and it is both political and spiritual. The Book of Enoch was known to the first Christians. Indeed, some of them treated it as scripture and openly quoted from it. For instance, Enoch is directly cited in the New Testament epistle of Jude, which alludes to his prophecy that the Lord would arrive with thousands of his holy ones to carry out judgment on everyone. That passage is taken directly from Enoch and is not found in Genesis, Exodus, or the Psalms. Its spiritual power was acknowledged by early church fathers like Tertullian and Clement of Alexandria, who also discussed it. However, as the church developed into an organization, its leaders had to decide what was too risky and what should be included in the canon. Why was Enoch dangerous? Its pages go into great detail about the angels' rebellion, how supernatural beings corrupted humanity, and the judgment that awaited both heavenly powers and humans. By portraying humanity's struggle as a matter of sin, repentance, and forgiveness, the Western Church attempted to simplify the creation and salvation narrative. Enoch added complexity to that story by exposing a cosmic conflict between angels and demons, demonstrating that human suffering was caused by fallen spirits who tainted the world with knowledge that was forbidden, in addition to Adam's fall. The Book of Enoch brought up issues that were too challenging for bishops and councils to handle, while attempting to keep things cohesive and under control. Christianity, meanwhile, took a different course in Ethiopia. Enoch was never abandoned by the Ethiopian Church, one of the world's oldest Christian communities. Because they believed it to be a part of the original testimony of faith, they preserved it in their sacred texts. Enoch was a witness to them, not a threat. It disclosed facts about the invisible world that corresponded with the conflicts between good and evil that they had encountered in their own past. Ethiopia preserved Enoch like a treasure, passing it down through the ages, while Western Christianity erased it from popular knowledge. Because of this, Ethiopian believers are still able to open their Bibles and read the entirety of Enoch's visions, whereas most people only hear a faint echo of his story when they hear his name today. Enoch's exclusion from the Western canon was not a singular incident. Many books were contested or disregarded during the church councils that defined orthodoxy in the centuries following Christ. Enoch, however, was different. It was rejected because it had both age and influence, not because it lacked either. It had once been treasured by the Jewish community and worshipped by early Christians, but by the time the canon was decided in Rome, its value had diminished. Its depictions of angels instructing people in weapons, magic, and secret sciences sounded too much like myths that the church wished to suppress. Leaders were concerned that if Enoch was included, Christianity would come across as too paganism-like or too susceptible to superstitious charges. They made the story simpler by taking it out. However, in the process of simplifying, they also removed a layer of cosmic struggle that previously provided believers with a more comprehensive understanding of the reasons behind the world's suffering. Ironically, echoes of the book persisted even after the Western Church abandoned Enoch. Its themes influenced the imagination of both Jews and Christians, and writers and academics kept referring to it and studying it. Many of Jesus's listeners would have been familiar with concepts from Enoch when he discussed angels, judgment, or the coming kingdom. His references to heavenly hosts, parables about judgment, and warning about eternal fire ready for the devil and his angels all ring true with imagery that Enoch had previously vividly detailed. It would not have sounded strange to the early Christians to hear Christ discuss these realities. It would have sounded like an extension of a tale they were already familiar with. Enoch's fingerprints can even be found in the New Testament itself. The Book of Revelation's imagery, which includes angels, trumpets, bowls of wrath, and visions of heaven, is reminiscent of Enoch's travels. Enoch's depictions of fallen creatures and their impact on the world also align well with the Apostle Paul's teachings regarding the principalities and powers that govern in heavenly realms. This link implies that even though Enoch was officially disregarded, the Christian imagination never really let it go. Long after it was taken out of the canon, it influenced how believers viewed heaven, hell, and the afterlife. Therefore, the question is not only why Enoch was excommunicated by the Western Church, but also what was lost in the process. Without it, the Bible shrank in size, and the narrative of humanity's fight against evil became more limited to earthly sin. It gives the story a broader scope, reaching into the heavens and demonstrating how humans are a part of a cosmic conflict, involving angels, demons, and the very fabric of creation. Ethiopia preserved this, which is why the Book of Enoch is still relevant today. If Enoch had stayed in the Western canon, just think of how Christianity might have changed. It's possible that believers would have felt more connected to the spiritual realm, understood why the earth is both beautiful and corrupt, and had a stronger bond with the ancient religion that united heaven and earth. Rather, the book was concealed, discussed in whispers, or handled as an object of curiosity. It has only recently started to reappear as researchers, seekers, and believers alike return to it for understanding. It is no coincidence that Enoch survived in the Ethiopian Bible. It serves as a reminder that some facts cannot be changed, regardless of how many councils discuss them or how many leaders attempt to censor them. They stay, awaiting the time when readers will be prepared to reread them. When contemporary readers revisit Enoch, they discover not only an archaic fascination, but also a vision that continues to address issues of justice, judgment, and hope. Humans have always wondered what is out there in the sky. Our ancestors believed that the sky was more than just a ceiling of clouds because of the stars, the changing hues of dawn and dusk, the sun's blazing power, and the moon's quiet authority. It was a doorway to them. One of the earliest societies to observe the heavens mathematically was the ancient Mesopotamians, who held that the sky was composed of layers, each of which was governed by a distinct god or spirit. They pictured the heavens as a series of stacked realms, the highest of which was inaccessible to humans and the lowest nearest to earth. 3 main heavens, each reflecting the might of celestial beings and related to the sun, moon, and stars, are described in Babylonian texts. They believed that ascending higher meant becoming nearer to heavenly authority. Some of these concepts were passed down to and modified by the Jewish people. In addition to being God's home, heaven is described In their scriptures is a huge region where angels work, where judgment occurs, and where mysteries are revealed. In their praise of the Lord, the psalmist spoke of the heavens of heavens, implying that there were several levels of glory rather than just one sky. Jewish texts that described 7 heavens were part of the further development of rabbinic traditions. Every heaven served a distinct purpose. Some were inhabited by winds and clouds, others by stars, some by angels singing, and the highest was the Almighty's throne room. Similar to the earth, the heavens were alive and full of order and purpose in the Jewish mind. The Greeks used myth and philosophy to approach the heavens. Zeus and the Olympian gods, who resided atop Mount Olympus, but were also associated with the celestial order, were seen by them as belonging to the sky. These myths were incorporated into philosophical systems by Greek thinkers such as Plato and Aristotle. They held that the heavens were made up of crystalline spheres that held planets, or stars in perfect balance. They envisioned the prime mover, a source of ultimate perfection that initiated everything beyond the outermost sphere. The Greek perspective depicted the heavens as layered realms that were filled with divine presence, ordered and purposeful. Despite their different expression, these concepts weren't unique. The idea of a layered sky was prevalent in Egypt, Persia, India, and other cultures. The heavens were viewed by the ancient Egyptians as the body of the goddess Nut, arching over the earth, with the sun passing through her body every day and stars adorning her. Persian mythology described a multi-layered universe in which angels and demons fought in invisible worlds. According to Hindu cosmology, there are 14 worlds, 7 above and 7 below, each with its own inhabitants and governing bodies. Despite differences in specifics, they were all united by the conviction that the sky was not a flat plane, but rather a network of concealed levels, each of which held spiritual truths. Why did so many cultures reach the same conclusions? It might have been the innate human tendency to perceive order in the cosmos. The sky appeared to have a hidden design because of its consistent patterns and changing seasons. Ancient eyes demanded an explanation for the majesty of the heavens and the regularity of the stars. The sky must have been structured if the earth, with its mountains, rivers, deserts, and seas, was. The heavens must also be layered with powers, each level higher and more glorious than the one below. If humans had hierarchies of kings and servants, armies and laborers, the Book of Enoch entered this ancient realm of myth and imagination, and what it revealed was unmatched. Enoch didn't just use ambiguous language when he talked about heavens. As someone who had passed through them, he gave a detailed account of them. Enoch, who was taken up by angels, said he saw 10 different heavens, each with its own creatures and functions. Enoch proclaimed 10 realms, while the Mesopotamians saw 3, the Jews 7, and the Greeks crystalline spheres. For him, it was testimony, not conjecture. Under the guidance of angels, he traversed them and came back to share his observations. In Enoch's vision, the heavens represented a vast spiritual map of existence rather than merely stages of the sky. The spirits of the righteous dead were housed in the first heaven, awaiting their justification. He came across the storehouses of natural forces higher up, including lightning, hail, snow, and winds, all of which were controlled by angels who maintained creation's order. He saw fallen angels shackled in prisons of darkness in other heavens, waiting to be judged for their disobedience. Enoch, surrounded by innumerable angelic hosts singing praises, entered the throne room of God in the highest heaven, glowing beyond description. Every realm had its own beauty, its own horrors, and its own role. Enoch's account was noteworthy not only for its detail, but also for the moral framework it incorporated into the universe. Mesopotamians believed that the heavens represented the authority of erratic and self-centered gods. The heavens were cold but ordered, impersonal and mathematical to the Greeks. The heavens were beautiful to Jews, but mostly inaccessible and only partially visible. The sky, however, provided a moral drama in Enoch's tale. There was a waiting area for the faithful dead. For the sake of justice, the fallen angels were chained. The Creator's faithful servants controlled the natural forces, which were not arbitrary. Above all, the source of light and life for all creation was the throne of God, which was central rather than remote. Enoch's map of heaven was much more than a mere curiosity because of this blending of morality and vision. It was enlightening. It demonstrated that every realm was connected to the conflict between light and darkness, and that the universe was both vast and purposeful. Humans weren't the only ones or the focal point of the universe. They were a part of a cosmic tale about beings bigger and stranger than themselves that spanned the heavens. This was both frightening and reassuring to listeners in antiquity. It was terrifying because it showed a far bigger reality than they had anticipated. It was consoling because it demonstrated that justice was remembered, the righteous were remembered, and wrongdoers, even angelic ones, were held accountable. Enoch is also unique because of the impact his vision had on succeeding generations. Using his descriptions as a guide, later Jewish mystics would write about several heavens. Christ's promises regarding angels, judgment, and the kingdom of God were echoed in his visions, according to early Christians. As a reminder that the concept of layered realms persisted throughout religions, even centuries later, Islamic tradition would mention the Prophet Muhammad's nighttime journey through 7 heavens. At the base of this stream was Enoch's story, which provided one of the most thorough spiritual maps ever documented. The universality of layered heavens across cultures points to something significant when we take a broader view. Either these ancient visions were based on glimpses of something real, something beyond ordinary sight, or human imagination always went in the same direction. The latter is brashly asserted in the Book of Enoch. It offers testimony rather than conjecture. Enoch saw, traveled, and returned, and what he portrayed was not chaos, but order, revelation rather than myth. The narrative starts with a man whose life was considered ordinary by the outside world, but remarkable by the divine. Enoch lived so closely with the Creator that he did not see death as others do. He is a figure that is frequently reverently mentioned in ancient writings. Rather, he traveled beyond the edge of the earth, where human eyes stop seeing and human feet stop walking. His ascent was led by divine messengers who lifted the invisible veil. It was neither a dream nor a passing vision of his imagination. Take a moment to imagine what it must be like to be raised from the earth's dust into the luminous reaches of uncharted territory, leaving the rhythm of day and night behind to enter eternity. According to the writings, Enoch was caught up in the storm of divine presence rather than being a passive observer. The angels must have been so overwhelming in appearance when they came to take him upward. Angels are frequently described in the Bible as beings of light, with voices that resound, like the sound of rushing waters and forms that burn like fire. Enoch felt both awe and fear when he was among them, as if the very fabric of creation were creating a path specifically for him. The earth below him would have seemed tiny, far away, and fading, while the heavens above drew closer with a magnetic pull. Enoch started his journey into the first heavenly realms under the guidance of these celestial beings. The first heaven was the threshold of the invisible rather than the splendor of the throne, so the transition itself carried weight. According to some traditions, the firmament above the earth acted as both a veil and a foundation for the higher realms, and the first heaven was a place of clouds and waters. There, the stars were viewed as living fires rather than far-off lights, each guided by an angel assigned to its path. The realization that even the sun and moon's movements were not natural occurrences, but rather divine order supervised by celestial beings came with walking here. Every step Enoch took was a wake-up call to the fact that the universe was alive, with meaning. He was shown the harmony between heaven and earth by the angels by his side as they explained the secrets of creation. The thunder that roars, the rain that falls, and the wind that blows were all controlled by forces that exist outside of mortal sight. He was profoundly shaken by this first encounter because it made clear that the material world was governed by higher laws and guardians rather than existing on its own. But his adventure didn't end there. His sense of human insignificance increased, along with the intensity of divine majesty at each level. The trembling that occurs when one is in front of the sacred rather than the fear of punishment was the source of Enoch's racing heart. He was overcome with awe because this reality was unlike anything he had ever experienced on earth. Even his words, which have been preserved in the Book of Enoch, are merely dim reflections of the splendor he witnessed. As his words struggled to convey what he saw, the angels reassured him that he had been selected for this journey as they guided him upward. Imagine a mortal man being told that he was destined to see the mysteries of creation and judgment, and then being lifted into corridors that very few people ever walk. Instead of reprimanding him for his fear, the angelic messengers gave him the strength to withstand the radiance that would only grow. Their very existence acted as a shield, allowing him to move where unprepared flesh would not be able to. Enoch experienced a mixture of wonder and fear the farther he traveled. To witness the splendor of heaven is to experience truth revealed, not just to look at hues and shapes. His eyes awoke to wide vistas of light, where walls of crystal glistened with otherworldly radiance and rivers of fire flowed with purity. Even so, early in his climb, he realized that what he was witnessing was just the start, a taste of worlds beyond. This journey was more than just a single man's vision. The texts ask us to walk with him and put ourselves in his shoes, to imagine stepping into a silence that is not empty, but rather filled with divine presence after leaving behind the cacophony of the world, the shouting of voices, the weight of concerns. Every desire for eternity and every query about life after death seemed to awaken with fresh possibilities in that silence. Perhaps the paths were made visible for all of us to know and aspire to, if heaven is real and one man could be shown them. The intimacy of the journey is what makes Enoch's ascent so remarkable. It is portrayed as a revelation intended to arouse the hearts of those who are still confined to the earth, not as a far-off myth or an inaccessible story. The angels' leadership serves as a reminder that no one rises alone. In order for the human soul to endure the splendor of the heavens, it needs assistance, direction, and divine grace. His perseverance teaches us that humans were created for more than dust, but his fear serves as a reminder of our own frailty. The profound reality that eternity cannot be described but must be experienced is reflected in his awe. The foundation for everything that comes after was laid by Enoch's initial steps of ascent. Beyond what the human eye can see, it was a journey into reality itself, not just into the sky. To imagine this is to push the limits of our beliefs and to consider the possibility that heaven is layered in dimensions outside of space and time rather than above the clouds as we typically envision it. Enoch's testimony turns into a road map for people who are curious about the life to come, and each realm becomes more bright, terrifying, and meaningful. Enoch was met with a reality that was both familiar and completely different when he first entered the first heaven. Here, the clouds that humans see from below manifested as enormous structures, living seas of mist and light that were controlled by invisible forces rather than as vapors that drifted. He learned that the earth's winds, which humans consider to be weather-related accidents, are actually powers that are regulated by designated guardians. With authority woven into their very being, great angels stood over these elements without visible chains or swords. They controlled the movement of air, the ebb and flow of storms, the roar of thunder, and the soft fall of rain. Nothing happened at random. Enoch saw every drop of water falling from the sky and every gust that shook the trees as a part of a larger plan. The angels of the first heaven were ministers of order rather than creatures of wrath or judgment. Their world was a flurry of activity, with thunderclouds rolling, winds stirring, and lightning flashing across light horizons. Enoch observed that each angel was tasked with a particular force: the east wind, the west wind, the rains that nourished the earth, and the snow and frost that fell during their season. To enter this world was to witness the breathing of creation itself, guided by divine guidance. For Enoch, the lesson was obvious. Nature is an ordered system that submits to the will of the Most High through his designated servants, not a wild, uncontrollable force. Its harmony held the first heaven's awe. Here, the storm, the flood, and the lightning strike, things that people frequently fear, were shown to be subject to divine authority. The angels in charge of these powers made sure that creation was maintained by acting precisely rather than cruelly. Enoch would have understood that these spirits' invisible labors were essential to maintaining the equilibrium of the planet. The natural world would fall into anarchy without their order. He was forced to face the hidden reality that what appears normal to the human eye is extraordinary in divine reality after having this vision of the first heaven. However, the tone of his journey changed as he was guided outside of this realm. Shadows replaced the first heaven's radiance as the angels led him upward. Instead of harmony, the second heaven was a place of eerie quiet, punctuated only by the sound of agonized cries resonating through enormous pitch-black chambers. The prison of the fallen angels, those who once stood in glory but disobeyed the divine order, was what Enoch encountered here. These creatures, in contrast to the glowing sentries of the first heaven, were shackled and held captive in a pit where light could scarcely penetrate. There was nothing like the soft processes of creation in the second heaven. Rather, it was a place of imprisonment where disobedience had its repercussions. These angels, who were once brilliant beings who preferred disobedience to obedience, were inmates rather than ministers. They waited for judgment while bound in dense darkness. Their voices filled the emptiness with sorrow, serving as a reminder that pride and deliberate decision, not weakness, were the causes of their downfall. Enoch watched their suffering with trembling, not joy. The difference between obedience and rebellion was very evident in this case. The burden of justice weighed heavily on this realm. While the angels of the second heaven were imprisoned and deprived of their freedom due to their disobedience, the angels of the first heaven moved freely in the light, obeying divine commands. Enoch's eyes were opened to the fact that even heaven has consequences in addition to mercy. The second heaven served as a warning and a reminder that even those who were created in splendor are subject to accountability. It was more than just a prison. According to customs related to Enoch's writings, the fallen ones had previously come to earth and interacted with people in ways that the Creator forbade. They rebelled against order itself, not against weakness. They had left their position in order to establish their own authority, which led to the spread of corruption throughout the planet. They were now reduced to the shadows in the second heaven, their freedom taken away, their brightness extinguished. Their chains, which were unbreakable and eternal until the day of final reckoning, were made of divine restraint rather than iron. Enoch must have felt both fear and wisdom upon encountering this world. Here, the cosmos demonstrated that disobedience results in bondage rather than freedom. A living parable was created by the contrast between the first and second heavens. The angels who sought freedom from order were enslaved in darkness, while the winds and rains, which appear wild to the human eye, submit to order and remain free. While obedience fosters creation, disobedience results in disaster. Enoch and everyone else who would hear his story later were reminded by the cries of the fallen angels. They expressed regret and sadness in their voices, but they also expressed defiance, a refusal to accept the justice that had been meted out to them. According to some old legends, these creatures even beg Enoch to act as their representative and bring their requests before the Almighty. Their desperation demonstrated their realization that they were powerless to avoid judgment. But their prison was safe, and the heavens had sealed their doom. The message is both timeless and sobering for those who consider this vision. The beauty of submission and the alignment of creation with divine will are revealed in the first heaven. The tragedy of creatures made for light but destined for darkness is revealed in the second, along with the price of rebellion. When taken as a whole, these two domains depict the universe as a place of moral order in which all beings, whether they be spirits, humans, or angels, must decide between obedience and defiance. Elevated between these realms, Enoch would have been more acutely aware of the consequences of his decision. He had witnessed both the agony of those who left their place and the harmony of angels ruling creation. Heaven itself demonstrated that the greatest power is not in force, but in alignment. With the Creator's will, so his heart would have been filled with both wonder and sorrow. While the second heaven thundered with the warning that rebellion destroys life, the first heaven whispered the truth that order sustains life. Enoch must have understood that his journey was not only to see wonders, but also to impart lessons to those who were still on earth as he continued to ascend under the direction of obedient angels. As demonstrated in the first heaven, the road of obedience leads to freedom and harmony. As the second makes clear, the road of rebellion leads to enslavement and hopelessness. Standing side by side, these two worlds speak to everyone's heart who is unsure of their own fate as well as to the universe above. The scene before Enoch changed in a way that no earthly language could adequately describe as he was led farther, upward from the second heaven's shadows. He was suddenly confronted by a vision of breathtaking beauty as the darkness that had pressed upon him gave way to a radiant brilliance. This was the third heaven, a place that appeared to hold the two most extremes of life, unfathomable happiness on the one hand and unfathomable suffering on the other. The paradise of light caught his attention first. It was a garden so bright and pure that even the memory of Eden on earth seemed to be a dim reflection of its splendor. Here was the real garden of God, untarnished by corruption or sin, where life itself flourished in unending harmony. There were no trees like the ones Enoch saw on the ground below. Their leaves glittered with living light, and their trunks gleamed like polished bronze. Every tree produced an abundance of fruit, thriving year-round, with branches laden with sustenance rather than being restricted to a particular season. Sweet, soothing, and full of promise, the scent permeated the air. From the heart of this paradise, rivers of living water poured out in crystal-clear streams that brought healing and rejuvenation along with refreshment. A chorus of joy filled the garden as luminous winged birds sang, and each sound seemed to reflect the harmony of creation in perfect harmony with its creator. Enoch witnessed the souls of the righteous here, dressed in robes of light rather than clothing made of cloth. As though every scar from earthly existence had been closed, their faces glowed with tranquility, free from grief or suffering. They walked freely in the garden, praising the Most High, talking to each other and being attended to by angels. Some cared for the trees, some picked fruit, and some just stood by the running water, savoring the tranquility that permeated each blade of grass and leaf. A vision of what had been promised to those who persevered in righteousness. This was the reward for faithfulness. Enoch quickly learned, however, that the third heaven was more than just paradise. There seemed to be a place of horror and despair across from this magnificent garden, divided by a huge chasm. The fiery glow of torment met his eyes, which had been drawn from the brightness of Eden. There were cries of pain that stood in stark contrast to the songs of happiness. Shadows fell on those trapped inside as flames jumped out of deep pits. As they suffered the repercussions of their actions, these were souls in agony, ensnared in chains of judgment, their faces contorted. In desperation, this place was a place of spiritual as well as physical torment. There, the spirits recalled the lives they had led, the chances they had lost, and the light they had turned away. These souls carried the burden of regret and the heartbreaking realization that they had chosen paths of violence, greed, and rebellion, in contrast to the tranquility of the righteous. In addition to being fire, the flames that engulfed them represented their inner destruction and the breakdown of everything they had held dear in life. The tormentors were not demons, rather, they were the lingering effects of their own decisions. Enoch was overcome by the emotional contrast. There was a sense of fulfillment, tranquility, and laughter on one side. Screams of pain and despair reverberated through the emptiness on the other side. The torment's despair made the garden's beauty shine more brightly, and the garden's brilliance made the torment seem darker. Standing at the intersection of ultimate destiny, where the full ramifications of human decisions were exposed, was what it meant to be in the third heaven. As Enoch watched, his heart must have been split in two. His spirit shuddered at the hopelessness of the condemned, but it also rejoiced when he saw the righteous walking in God's presence. He was shown that heaven itself is a place of both promise and caution, happiness and sorrow, reward and punishment. The third heaven was more than just a paradise. It was a reflection of humanity's moral development and proof that every decision matters and that every action has consequences that go beyond life on earth. This vision had strong symbolism. The restored Garden of Eden in heaven revealed the Creator's original intent, which was for people to live in harmony, peace, and eternal life. It showed that what had been lost on earth as a result of disobedience had been preserved above, waiting for those who would follow the righteous path. However, the sight of suffering demonstrated that hatred, greed, and rebellion are not only remembered, but endure forever. The seeds of human action ripen into eternal consequences, much like seeds planted in the ground grow into harvest. Every soul faces two destinies, as if the third heaven's structure itself were speaking. The garden exhorts everyone who sees it to stay faithful with its whispers of hope. The fire warns anyone who hears it to avoid the devastation. Together, they represent the Most High's justice and mercy, justice in the actuality of punishment, and mercy in the promise of paradise. Picture yourself strolling alongside Enoch at that precise moment. You would see fruit-bearing trees, boundless, rivers of light and glowing souls celebrating freedom to your right. To your left, you would hear heartbreaking cries, writhing shadows, and burning but never extinguished flames. The sight alone would shake you out of your complacency and remind you that life has consequences and that every action you take now shapes the path you will eventually take forever. Enoch was given permission to see both realms by the angels who led him, not just for himself, but also for everyone who would hear his testimony in the future. Humanity is frequently torn between obedience and disobedience, between light and shadow, and between hope and temptation. These decisions were shown in the third heaven as realities that influence eternity rather than as merely theoretical concepts. What Enoch witnessed became a warning to everyone. Those who walk in righteousness will find a garden, while those who turn away will face fire. Perhaps the most emotionally charged vision Enoch had seen on his journey so far was the third heaven. The fate of human souls was at stake, not just the majesty of creation or the angels' punishment. It was a world that simultaneously filled him with joy and sorrow, giving him a sense of urgency. To see torment was to understand the price of rejection. To see paradise was to catch a glimpse of the reward of faith. One of his ascent's most profound revelations was this duality standing side by side. Enoch's eyes were greeted by a world of brilliant brilliance as he was raised higher above the third heaven's paradise and agony. He felt as if he had entered the center of the universe. The vast space in front of him was where the sun, moon, and stars faithfully followed their predetermined courses. In the fourth heaven, where angels designated to oversee the heavens kept watch over the order of creation, light itself appeared to be alive. The sun was the first thing that caught his attention. It burned with a fire so bright that no earthly eye could stand it. But here, in this sacred space, Enoch's eyes were fortified to see it. Its rays reached across the firmament's vastness like golden rivers. Angels and other powerful beings of light swarmed around it, directing its warmth on the ground and making sure it rose and set. The perfect order created by the Creator is demonstrated by the fact that these celestial guardians were neither hurried nor chaotic. Every action was purposeful. Enoch then noticed the moon, which was soft and silver and reflected the sun's radiance with a softer glow. As the months and seasons passed, its light changed through cycles of fullness and fading. Angels encircled it as well, documenting every stage as if they were writing the time's beat. Enoch believed that the heavens held a living calendar, a divine system that humans used to measure festivals, holy days, and planting and harvest. Heavenly messengers who protected the balance of time meticulously planned the patterns of light and shadow rather than letting them happen at random. The stars, which were innumerable and dispersed throughout the sky, like jewels on velvet, glowed beyond them. Even though each one shone with a distinct brilliance, none deviated from its predetermined path. Enoch observed that the stars themselves were marching in formation, each held in place by divine command, much like soldiers in a vast army. Among them, angels of power stood, directing their steps and making sure they didn't veer. Together, the stars produced a harmony that could never be composed by a human hand. Some stars shone with gentle light, while others shone with fiery intensity. Enoch became increasingly aware that nothing in the heavens was left to chance as he continued to look. The sun's rise, the moon's phases, and the stars' positions were all meticulously incorporated into the creation plan. This was more than just the sky's beauty, it was the basis of time, the celestial clock that governed earthly life. The messengers who worked in silence measured each day, month, season, and year precisely as they flowed from this cosmic order. Enoch was informed by one of the angels that the Most High had appointed these lights to serve as both guides and lights. The stars indicated the designated times, the sun controlled the day, and the moon controlled the night. Here in the fourth heaven, Enoch witnessed the reality that every sunrise was an act of obedience, and every sunset was a reflection of divine faithfulness, something that humanity frequently took for granted. Without using words, the heavens above served as a magnificent testament to the knowledge and might of their Creator. However, even as the fourth heaven's harmony lifted his soul, Enoch was soon carried farther, into a world that was sorrowful rather than bright. He felt the weight of grief immediately pressing down on the air as the fifth heaven opened before him. Here he saw creatures that had once shone with glory, but were now bowed in despair instead of stars or glowing gardens. These were fallen angels who had strayed from the path of obedience and were now stuck in a never-ending state of mourning. With their eyes dimmed and their heads lowered, they sat silently. Shadows clung to their forms, replacing the brilliance that had once covered them. These angels were broken in regret rather than raging in defiance, unlike the chained rebels Enoch had seen in the second heaven. Remembering the light they had lost and the closeness to God they had given up, they wept unendingly. Their cries were groans of sorrow, the kind that pierce deeper than fire rather than screams of rage. Enoch had never experienced the atmosphere of the fifth heaven before. It was thick with grief, so thick that it seemed to seep into the air itself. The fallen angels were unable to raise their eyes to heaven. The unbearable weight of their own memories, rather than shackles, condemned them. They all recalled the delight of being in the Most High's presence, the honor of serving in the courts of glory, and the praise songs that they used to sing. All of it was gone now, and their suffering was the loss. There was no way back, so their grief lasted forever. At one point they had made the decision to rebel, and by doing so they had abandoned the reason they were here. In addition to being cut off from God, disobedience came with the eternal grief of realizing what they had lost. Enoch felt pity for these creatures because, despite their fallen state, they were still recognizable. Their demise was all the more tragic because he could see in them what they had once been. Compared to the second heaven's fire and chains, the fifth heaven told a different kind of tale. It was an image of unending sorrow rather than violent punishment. It became clear that disobedience has both internal and external repercussions. While the body may be burned by the fire, the soul is consumed by grief. These angels served as a living example of how rebellion results in unfathomable loss in addition to wrath. Seeing them meant realizing that sin is more than just breaking the law. It is tearing oneself away from the very thing that gives life and light. The change from the fourth to the fifth heaven must have been too much for Enoch to handle. The contrast between the sun, moon, and stars, all of which shone in obedient harmony, and the shadows of angels who were grieving and had lost their light, was nearly intolerable. The heavens showed him the ruin of rebellion, as well as the reward of order. The fifth heaven showed the price of treachery, while the fourth heaven showed the beauty of obedience. This vision left a lasting emotional impact, as he was reminded that every star and sunrise is a part of a divine order. The fourth heaven filled him with wonder. He was saddened by the fifth heaven, which reminded him that even heavenly beings can fail if they stray from the straight and narrow. In addition to time and seasons, the tale written in the heavens also dealt with decisions and their everlasting effects. The sixth realm, a kingdom of exact administration rather than chaos, stands out in the vast unfolding of the heavens as a place of astounding order and structure. The creatures that live here are servants of divine authority who keep watch over the complex web of existence itself, not warriors confined to battle or mourners of lost glory. This heaven's air is distinct from the previous ones. It is less tumultuous than the first's winds, less gloomy than the second's prison, less divided than the third's paradise and agony, and less dazzling than the fourth's cosmic dance. It bears the burden of accountability, a burden so heavy that even this realm's silence has meaning. Each angel who passes through this realm has a role that affects humanity's fate, and they all carry themselves like officials in a hallowed court. They keep records, make decisions, and oversee minuscule yet powerful tasks that would cause the world to collapse in the absence of their unseen work. This is where the divine plan becomes a reality for humanity. These angelic administrators are in charge of the food that keeps the body healthy, the health that keeps life going, the direction that keeps souls on course, and the enormous scrolls that document every action taken by men and women. Imagine endless shelves and rows of ethereal archives where inscriptions glow with the weight of truth and scrolls shimmer with light. Because memory itself is sacred in this heaven, angels walk between them to make sure nothing is forgotten. It is an active account, a living record that bears witness to every act of kindness, every act of cruelty, and every decision made during the short time spent on this planet, rather than a passive remembrance. The thought of it makes me feel cold with awe, that our actions echo in some corner of eternity, that not even the smallest whisper goes unnoticed. Among the most amazing are the angels of provision. They guarantee that rain falls where it is supposed to, that the earth's cycles bear fruit, and that grain emerges from the soil to feed innumerable mouths. They distribute the blessings of heaven in accordance with the Most High's plan, although they are aware of the plight of the impoverished, the hunger of children, and the overabundance of kings. They are not farmers, but they know the secrets of harvesting. They are not bakers, but their management is essential to the world's bread supply. Although a seed's growth may seem normal to the human eye, it is accounted for, monitored, and delivered as part of a vast celestial economy in the sixth heaven. The angels of health, who protect the delicate balance of life, stand next to them. Though frequently invisible, they whisper resilience into the bodies of those afflicted by illness and carry healing in their wings. Sometimes they allow illness because suffering can also have a mysterious purpose, humbling the spirit and molding the soul. However, nothing happens that these celestial guardians are unaware of. They can even control the emergence and decline of epidemics, the invisible war of disease. Humanity may give credit to science and medicine, but these angelic doctors are the ones who weave both health and weakness into the narrative of fate, hidden behind the curtain of material discovery. Guidance is a tendency of another order of beings, and it may be their most personal task. They illuminate rather than dictate, presenting the darkness of foolishness and the light of wisdom to human hearts so that man can make his own decisions. These angels represent the uneasiness that follows a concealed sin, the soft voice in the conscience, and the pull in the soul toward righteousness. They make sure that everyone is at a crossroads where there is genuine choice, not by silencing temptation, but by balancing it with the call of virtue. Since every generation brings with it new challenges, and every soul must contend with the age-old conflict of obedience or rebellion, their labor is invisible but never-ending. These angels document not only our actions, but also our internal conflicts, recognizing the hidden triumphs and hardships that are invisible to the naked eye. The illusion of randomness is destroyed by the idea of such administration. To live your life thinking that everything happens by chance is to miss the invisible order that this world maintains. In actuality, the sixth heaven shows that the universe is a kingdom run by justice and compassion, organized according to a hierarchy and always subject to the Most High's throne. The angels in this place don't just show up. They follow orders that come from the higher heavens, where the mysteries are unraveled. Their vigilance protects the destinies entrusted to them, their diligence maintains balance, and their obedience preserves creation. This vision is instructive as well as symbolic for humanity. It teaches that every meal, every breath, and every turn in the road bears the imprint of heavenly care, and that our lives unfold within a structure bigger than ourselves. Being grateful becomes more than just being polite. It is a recognition that we are supported by forces beyond our control, because no one can claim ignorance or insignificance. If every action is documented, responsibility also increases. Realizing that life cannot be wasted in carelessness or foolishness without repercussions is what it means to picture angels recording one's deeds in glowing scrolls. But even in this heaven, there is mercy, repentance, and tears that fall unnoticed, but are carefully considered by the angelic scribes, can change records. A cruel act may be written, but so may forgiveness, charity, or sacrifice. When man's heart bends toward humility, the administration of the sixth heaven can be transformed from icy bureaucracy to living justice that can bend toward mercy. There is compassion even in the application of the law, because the divine government prefers restoration to condemnation. This area also encourages contemplation on the essence of authority. Earthly governments come and go, their leaders are frequently dishonest, and their laws are frequently unfair. However, an alternative vision of governance based on obedience, integrity, and perfect accountability is depicted in the sixth heaven. If the universe is sustained by such administration, it might serve as a standard by which earthly systems are evaluated. Kings, presidents, and councils may believe they rule, but their authority is temporary, and their power is measured against this eternal order. Seeing the unseen threads that connect human existence to divine oversight is what it means to live with awareness of the sixth heaven. Knowing that provision is sacred, it is to eat with reverence. It is to bravely bear illness, knowing that one's body is being watched over. It involves making a shaky decision to choose good over evil, knowing that it is a cosmic rather than a trivial one. And it is to walk in humility, knowing that one's whole life is recorded in glowing letters on scrolls that will eventually be opened. The idea evokes both weight and wonder, fear and hope. Nothing in our lives is too small to be seen, too hidden to be remembered, or too broken to be redeemed. This heaven shows the rigor of divine order, but it also shows the intimacy of divine love. Like the summit of a mountain too high for mortal eyes, the seventh heaven rises above all the others. It is a place so bright that the soul is overcome even by the memory of its light. The strongest angels reside here, arranged in perfect order around the seat of divine majesty, rather than dispersed in tasks like the 6th century administrators or in grief like the 5th century mourners. When raised together, their voices roll like the never-ending thunder of oceans, and their faces are dazzlingly brighter than suns. They are God's guardians of his immediate presence, the ones closest to the throne of eternity, not just his servants. Every wing movement is a hymn, and every look at the throne is an expression of their steadfast devotion. Their whole being throbs with strength, but none of it is theirs. It is borrowed radiance, reflected glory that emanates from the origin of all life. The trip into the seventh heaven was unlike anything Enoch had ever experienced before, having been raised to this height. His bravery had already been tried in the lower realms. The storms of the first, the darkness of the second, the agony and paradise of the third, the flaming radiance of the fourth, the grief of the fifth, and the immense order of the sixth. But nothing could prepare him for this. The air itself seemed alive as he stepped inside, infused with holiness so pure that it made his body tremble. He was first overcome by fear, not fear of danger, but fear of awe, the kind that engulfs the soul when it recognizes that it is in the presence of the inaccessible. Because he knew that a mortal dressed in flesh was not supposed to walk here, his heart pounded as though it might explode from his chest. More magnificent than anything his eyes had yet seen, the angelic hosts rose up around him. Some were enormous, creatures with innumerable eyes that glowed like fire and had simultaneous vision in all directions. Others were music radiating, their very shapes resonating like trumpets and harps, filling the sky with harmony. Others had wings that extended farther than the earth's horizon, while others were clad in flames or draped in crystal light. All of them stood in utter awe, their whole lives focused on the throne that gleamed in the middle. Because all focus, worship, and energy were directed toward the One sitting enthroned in uncreated light, no one dared to look away or consider themselves. Then Enoch was brought close to the throne, which was the moment that distinguished him from all other mortals. Even though their touch was like living fire, the angels who led him did it gently. The intensity of the radiance became intolerable as they carried him onward. It was something more, a light that was alive, conscious, and brimming with holiness, rather than the brightness of 1,000 suns. Enoch's body shook like a leaf in a storm as he collapsed to his face, unable to bear even a glimpse. He knew he had been selected for this moment, even though he felt more frail than a whisper and smaller than dust. His spirit was filled with both awe and fear, awe that he had been permitted to approach so closely, and fear that he might be consumed. The throne itself was so magnificent that it was impossible to describe. It was more than just a place to sit. It was a fiery hub of reality from which streams of glory, fire, and light poured out into the entire universe. From its summits, rivers of light flowed, feeding the stars, keeping the heavens alive, and directing men's paths. It was surrounded by burning wheels inside wheels of living fire, spinning at an unfathomable speed without ever colliding, a picture of flawless motion and order. And the Most High's presence, too great for the eyes and too holy for words, sat upon the throne. Enoch was unable to raise his eyes to see the face. All he could see was a mighty majesty that pervaded everything but stayed outside of everything. Enoch recognized the insignificance of human pride in that proximity. The splendor in front of him eclipsed all the accomplishments of kings, the conflicts of nations and the boasts of rulers. Since they were only there to mirror the throne's grandeur, even the greatest angels' might seemed insignificant. He came to understand that getting closer to God meant losing the illusion of self completely and becoming enmeshed in the reality of holiness, which is the only thing that keeps life going, rather than gaining power for oneself. He was awed, not by the fear of devastation, but by the shuddering realization that he was in the presence of absolute truth. His proximity has deep symbolic meaning. Approaching the throne means realizing what the heavens are all pointing to. The first heaven's winds and rains, the second heaven's judgment, the third heaven's paradise and suffering, the fourth heaven's cosmic order, the fifth heaven's grief, and the sixth heaven's administration are all reflections, pieces of the wholeness that are made visible here. The center of it all is the throne, the source of creation and the destination of it. The ultimate meaning of human life is revealed when one gets close enough to observe the beginning and end of everything. Additionally, Enoch's awe teaches that being close to the divine is consuming rather than casual. It dispels delusions, challenges, arrogance, and humbles the spirit. It is impossible to approach the throne and stay unaltered. Falsehood is burned away by the fire of holiness, which exposes one's true self. Enoch had to tremble before God, conscious of his weakness, but also lifted up by mercy, because he was allowed to stand there despite his lack of merit. His very existence in the midst of such grandeur was a gift of grace in and of itself, demonstrating that the divine, despite his overwhelming might, longs to communicate with the creature. Choirs of angels, their voices layered in harmonies beyond mortal comprehension, raised their unending praise around the throne. Every hymn was a proclamation of holiness, but none of them grew weary because praise was not a duty, but a joy here. They sang because the glory required it, not because they were told to, since witnessing the throne was an overwhelming act of devotion. Enoch listened with a trembling soul and a heart full of longing and fear. With the weight of eternity, the sound struck him, reminding him that the ultimate goal of all creation is to join this chorus and live in accordance with the glory emanating from the throne. Being close to the throne means being close to the origin of love. The blazing light was not just power, but compassion, not just majesty, but mercy. It was the same light that guides the lost, heals the sick, forgives the sinner, and sustains the impoverished. However, when viewed in its entirety, it was nearly intolerable, because its purity reveals everything that is concealed. Enoch came to see that humanity's proximity to God is both a gift and a calling. A calling because it necessitates change, and a gift because it is unmerited. One must give up more and more as they get closer, until only humility, love, and truth are left. The ultimate fate of everyone who seeks the divine is thus revealed by the seventh heaven, to stand close to the throne, to shudder in wonder, to be stripped of one's identity, and to be filled with the light that keeps creation alive. Enoch experienced both fear and wonder, death to pride and birth to truth, as well as terror and ecstasy at that very moment. Awe, surrender, and unending worship before the throne that shines beyond all heavens are the keys to achieving ultimate closeness to the divine, even though words cannot adequately convey the majesty of that realm. Enoch enters a world unlike any he has ever seen on his journey into the eighth heaven, where the very structure of the universe is revealed to him. The vast machinery of the universe itself, cared for and controlled by angelic guardians whose labor keeps the stars fixed in their courses, is what exists here rather than prisons of darkness or gardens of paradise. With constellations that glimmer and pulse like living things, the heavens resemble a vast tapestry. These are not merely ornaments in the sky, rather they are the clockwork of creation, with each constellation in harmony with divine intent and each star placed in its proper place. They are surrounded by powerful watchers and guardians who keep an eye on the harmony of the heavens. They have a commanding presence, their bodies seeming to have been carved from the very beams of the cosmos they guard, their forms glowing. With the light of the stars, Enoch is struck once more by the enormity of the human form as he gazes upon this enormous celestial stage. A man sees only specks of light strewn across the night from earth, but here he sees the living reality behind them, entire galaxies woven into patterns of divine order, each one connected by invisible lines of harmony and stars burning like living hearts. The guardians of the eighth heaven do more than just watch. They give orders, give guidance, and make sure that the cycles of the heavens never stop. The stars align for a season with a single gesture. The planets resume their eternal dance as another speaks. Every planet is a drumbeat, every star is a note, and the guardians themselves are the conductors of the universe's music, giving Enoch the impression that he is standing inside a cosmic symphony. Time itself assumes a new significance. Here, humans measure time in terms of days and nights, as well as the moon's waxing and the sun's rising. However, Enoch sees a more profound order here, one that includes ages, epochs, and eternal cycles, in addition to years. The eighth heaven is the workshop where God's magnificent design is preserved. It is more than just the sky above. The balance of creation depends on the watchfulness of these angelic beings. Comets burn across the heavens because they are allowed to, and the seasons change because the guardians make sure of it. It serves as a reminder that nothing in the universe is random, and that the stars that humans use for calendars, navigation, and storytelling all have a divine order that is too great for human comprehension. Enoch is reminded as he looks that people have long looked to the stars for direction. Poets write their songs in their glow, sailors guide their ships by their light, and farmers plant and harvest by their cycles. Enoch, however, recognizes that these lights are not merely natural occurrences, but also holy symbols here in the eighth heaven, prophecies written across the sky, destinies hinted at in constellations, and divine messages encoded in the eternal dance of light are just a few of the mysteries that the guardians whisper lurk within their patterns. The stars are not silent to the angels, rather they proclaim the glory of God. The fingerprints of a creator who precisely orders everything are revealed to those who have faith, not fate. Enoch is nearly blinded when he enters the ninth heaven, which rises above this order. The ninth is the very source of their brilliance, if the eighth was full of stars' precision. Light itself originates here, gushing out in streams too bright for mortal eyes. It is not light as we know it either, reflected off of water or filtered through the air. This is the source from which all illumination emanates into the universe. It is unadulterated, primordial light. It fills the heavens and keeps the stars of the eighth alive with their unending fire as it surges outward in waves. Enoch perceives himself as standing on the brink of creation's pulse, where light emanates from the Most High's throne and permeates the entire cosmos. Angels themselves appear in this world as formless, shadowless beings of pure light. Like flames within a larger fire, they are indistinguishable from the surrounding radiance. Their job is to embody the very essence of light itself, not to command or guard. They move silently, but their very presence conveys a lot because they exude clarity, truth, and purity. Here, Enoch comes to understand that light is knowledge, revelation, and spiritual life, not just illumination. This light unveils, reveals, and guides, just as darkness blinds and confounds. It is the eternal wisdom that shines into every soul that is open to receiving it, the divine word expressed in brilliance. Light in the ninth heaven has deep symbolic meaning. Light has been God's first act since the beginning of creation. It separates day from night and promises that darkness cannot triumph. Here, Enoch recognizes the ultimate meaning of the first command, "Let there be light." He realizes that light is spiritual rather than merely physical. It stands for virtue, veracity, and the divine's actual presence. The light of God leads the human soul through life's uncertainties in the same way that stars lead travelers. To turn toward this light is to turn toward hope, wisdom, and clarity. Ignorance, confusion, and despair are the results of turning away. Overwhelmed by this realization, Enoch starts to realize the connection between the eighth and ninth heavens. Although the guardians of the stars keep the universe in order, their power comes from the fountain of light in the ninth heaven. The order would fall apart without the source, and the light would have nothing to shine through if there was no order. When taken as a whole, they disclose a profound truth about the universe, that creation is both radiant and ordered, structured and alive, a harmony of glory and discipline. Humanity is also called to live in that balance, to shine with the light of truth and love while walking in order, guided by divine law. These heavens have lessons for those who are looking for purpose that go well beyond visions from antiquity. Every star has its place, and consequently, every life has its role, according to the eighth heaven, which teaches that the universe is not chaotic, but rather purposeful. The ninth teaches that light itself, not the light of human comprehension, but the eternal light that emanates from God, is the source of all that purpose. Collectively, they serve as a reminder that life is not a coincidence, but rather a symphony of order and illumination, in which each individual is both a reflection of divine radiance and a note in the harmony. As he mulls over this, Enoch's amazement deepens. He understands that what humans perceive as far-off stars are actually living manifestations of a divine reality rather than remote accidents. In reality, what philosophers refer to as chance is the eighth heaven's guardians arranging the universe. In accordance with wisdom, the brightness of the ninth heaven radiating outward to support life is actually what skeptics reject as meaningless light. Knowing this means having a new perspective on the world, realizing that the night sky is not empty, but rather replete with messages, and that the divine whisper is contained in every beam of light. Therefore, the architecture of creation and the energy that permeates it, as well as the union of order and light, are revealed in the eighth and ninth heavens. Enoch interprets this vision as both a revelation and an invitation to walk in the light, even when darkness threatens, and to have faith in the divine order, even when life seems chaotic. Because the divine plan continues to proceed faithfully, directing all creation toward its ultimate fulfillment, just as the stars never veer off course and the light never goes out. Enoch has never experienced a realm like the 10th heaven. He has risen with each step of his journey, but now he stands on the precipice of something that neither mortals nor even angels can fully comprehend. This light is not the enduring brightness of the 9th heaven or the borrowed radiance of stars. This is the beginning, the wellspring from which all other light emanates, a radiance so pure that it appears less like brightness and more like the manifestation of truth. Enoch senses his body, spirit, and even thoughts buckling under the weight of holiness as the air trembles with a presence too great to explain. He is no longer a man who ponders mysteries. He's joined them now. The Most High seat, the throne of glory, rises before him. It surpasses the beauty of all creation, despite not being handcrafted or embellished with earthly jewels. Like rivers, streams of fire flow outward from it, but they illuminate rather than devour. A rainbow of vibrant colors, each one changing and alive, rises from its base, representing eternal promises. In the surrounding air, thunder and song combine to create a sound that is too strong to be classified as words and too magnificent to be classified as music. The throne exudes life and light, as if everything in the universe beats in time with the one who occupies it. There are countless hosts, angels of all ranks, and radiant beings who bow down in awe around the throne. Seraphim proclaim the holiness of the eternal with unceasing cries, their voices like thundering waters. With their eyes burning with unwavering vision and their wings burning with devotion, cherubim circle the throne. Each archangel offers worship that rises like incense as they stand in ranks, powerful in strength but completely humbled. In the 10th heaven, praise is endless, like a river that has no beginning or end. No voice becomes tired and no heart becomes cold. Even though he is unable to comprehend every word in their songs, Enoch senses the meaning, that God is holy, eternal, and the origin of everything, pressing down on him like the weight of the light. He almost collapses under the wonder of this sight. Before such glory, Enoch feels as if he should crumble, dissolve, and disappear into nothing. However, he is upheld rather than destroyed. He is sustained so that he can stand by a power that enters him rather than his own. Angels approach, shining in their glory, and they adorn him with garments of light. What he once wore as a man is gone, and it is impossible to quantify what he is becoming. His voice reverberates with tones different from his own, and his face reflects the radiance of the throne. He understands that he is being changed into a witness, one who has been selected to see and speak what no man has ever seen or spoken before, rather than an angel or a god. The throne itself appears to be alive, throbbing with an inaccessible grandeur. The wisdom that governs all realms emanates from it. In the first, winds and waters obey angelic command. In the second, rebels are chained in darkness. In the third, paradise blooms and judgment burns. In the fourth and fifth, celestial bodies and grieving angels reveal the balance of obedience and fall. In the sixth, heavenly administrators hold the record of all. In the seventh, the most powerful approach, the divine presence. And in the eighth and ninth, creation is sustained by order and light. Enoch has witnessed all of these heavens, but he now understands that they are all merely reflections, fragments of the reality of the throne. Just as the throne holds the entirety of God's plan, the 10th heaven holds them all. Awe that pierces like a blade and soothes like a balm is what makes Enoch tremble, not just fear. The closer he gets, the more he understands that the throne is a revelation of God's nature rather than just a seat. This is justice, unwavering and flawless, the yardstick by which all actions are judged. This is mercy, boundless and radiant, pouring forgiveness to the repentant. Even the strongest angels bow down to this power, which is unbeatable and eternal. The love that created humanity from dust and breath, that arranged the stars, that keeps the worlds alive, and that now calls Enoch by name is here, burning brighter than anything else. In this instant, he recalls his earthly life, including the hardships of men, the corruption of his time, and the sorrow that his people endured. He recalls how people wandered, forgetting the one who created them, and erected towers of conceit and kingdoms of pride. And he understands that this throne was never far away, even in their foolishness. Though few realized it, the light it emits has always touched the earth, calling, guiding, and supporting, the overwhelming realization that man was created for. This light, for this presence, but so frequently chooses shadow, breaks Enoch's heart, but not out of despair. Enoch senses that the angels around him are bowing and rising in cycles of worship, and he knows that this is a necessity rather than a ritual. It is impossible to be silent in front of the throne. To see it is to worship. It is as necessary as life itself and as natural as breathing. Enoch's lips part and he exudes words of praise, words in the tongue of eternity, not his own, which he was unaware he could speak. His voice becomes a single note in an eternal harmony as he joins the never-ending chorus, blending with archangels, cherubim, and seraphim. He feels whole for the first time in his life, not because he has arrived at the destination of a journey, but rather because he has encountered the source. However, the throne does more than just shine. It changes. Enoch understands that he cannot go back the way he came. He has been reshaped, marked, and filled with knowledge that he cannot keep to himself because of the light. He sees visions of the earth as well as the heavens, including the rise and fall of kingdoms, fires and floods, deliverance and judgment. He sees glimmers of the Messiah, the one who will reconcile heaven and earth and walk among people like light among shadows. The throne shows that history is not random, but rather progressing toward divine fulfillment, and that the creation story is not yet complete. Enoch's metamorphosis is both amazing and terrifying. He is raised even higher, brought so near to the throne that he can feel its blazing intensity coursing through him. His body is no longer heavy or constrained by the earth's dust. An average man's mind would be shattered by the visions that his spirit can hold. He transforms into a voice that is not silenced, a flame that is not consumed, or a wind that is not lost. He is a bridge between heaven and earth, a testament that man, despite being made of dust, can stand in the presence of eternal glory when called and sustained by God himself. God does not make him equal to the angels, rather he sets him apart. Enoch thus sees what no man has ever seen before. The throne of glory is the epicenter of everything, the meeting point of justice and mercy, the unbounded source of power and love. Before it, Enoch undergoes a permanent transformation, and all around it there is unending worship. What started out as a man's journey has turned into a revelation, a turning point where the lines separating the divine and the mortal are blurred. Enoch is no longer merely a man who walked with God in the 10th heaven, at the throne of glory. He is the messenger of a vision too great to be concealed, the witness of the inexpressible. The visions that take place in the Book of Enoch are spiritual parables wrapped in imagery rather than just descriptions of celestial wonders or otherworldly landscapes. Every heaven contains a lesson about the interplay between human life and divine order, between God's will and human decision-making. With its winds, clouds, and angelic powers that control the natural world, the first heaven teaches us the value of harmony and order. The weather cycles follow orders. The rain does not fall randomly, and the winds do not rage without reason. Enoch recognizes that life is guided rather than chaotic in this truth, serving as a reminder to humanity that even the seemingly uncontrollable and wild things are subject to divine authority. The lesson for humans is straightforward but profound. Accept the order that is already in place, because defiance of the Creator's design only causes internal chaos. In contrast, the fallen angels are imprisoned in darkness in the second heaven. These are living examples of what happens when creation tries to exist independently of its source. In addition to being spiritual beings who disobeyed God, once magnificent and adorned with glory, they were beings of light. But their refusal to stay in the divine order turned their brilliance into shadow. The second heaven vision serves as a reminder to humanity of the perils of arrogance and disobedience, as well as how disobedience can smother one's inner light. The prison is more than just where they are incarcerated. It is the spiritual state of being cut off from God, a mirror for every soul that deviates from reality and ends up shackled by its own creation. Enoch is shown the stark contrast between paradise and punishment in the third heaven. The Garden of Delight, a revitalized Eden where all living things exude joy, beauty, and tranquility, is located on one side. On the other side of it is the fire, the place of suffering, where people who are cut off from life are consumed by agony and despair. This dichotomy reminds us that decisions shape life itself. Light or shadow, happiness or sorrow, are not random results, but rather the results of the choices made. A single vision of what it means to align or to deviate from the divine will encapsulates the promise of paradise and the warning of torment. The third heaven is a reflection of the human heart. Depending on the path taken, it can be either incredibly beautiful or utterly destructive. The divine calendar is introduced in the fourth heaven. The sun, moon, and stars are timepieces rather than merely sporadic celestial lights. Angelic beings guard their paths, making sure that day and night follow each other, that the seasons change in their turn, and that everything on earth proceeds as it should. The lesson of divine timing and patience can be found in this imagery. Although the heavens proclaim that time is God's, humanity frequently yearns to manipulate it, to accelerate fate, or to postpone what seems inevitable. The seasons serve as a reminder to humanity that everything has its time, and to fight against this reality would be to wear oneself out trying to change the unchangeable. Though the perspective changes, the fifth heaven revisits the idea of rebellion. Here Enoch observes the fallen angels in a state of perpetual mourning rather than overt disobedience. They weep for something that can never be recovered, lamenting their lost glory. This vision is unsettling because it shows the price of disobedience as well as the pointlessness of regret after the decision has been made. Though the vision cautions that some consequences are permanent and that the weight of missed opportunities cannot always be undone, humanity too frequently mopes over mistakes. It serves as a sobering reminder to make informed decisions before the doors of opportunity close. A spiritual government, where angelic administrators document, direct, and maintain creation, is revealed in the sixth heaven. Here, the angels make sure that every little thing is taken care of, including food, health, and human spiritual records. Nothing is forgotten, and nothing eludes their order. People are reassured by this vision that their lives matter, and that every decision, action, and hardship is observed and documented. It also refutes the notion that chaos governs existence, as the sixth heaven shows that an administration diligently maintains equilibrium behind the curtain. It makes a startlingly clear statement about contemporary life. There is purpose in every hardship, meaning in every breath, and guidance available even when it is hidden. Enoch approaches the actual throne. In the seventh heaven, the ultimate truth of divine nearness, that being near God is both the greatest honor and the most humble experience, is reflected in his feelings of awe and terror. Here, the most powerful angels reside, exuding light, their very nature reflecting their closeness to the Creator. This vision illustrates the paradox of intimacy with the divine for humanity, how it uplifts while simultaneously dispelling all illusions of pride, and how it inspires wonder while demanding reverence. The seventh heaven teaches humanity that the path to God is not one of self-exaltation, but rather of humility, a closeness that transforms by elevating the Creator rather than elevating man. The guardians of the stars, whose job it is to keep the universe in order, are shown in the eighth heaven. This is not a dreary view of astronomy. Rather, it serves as a reminder that accuracy and law govern the entire cosmos. Instead of moving aimlessly, stars shine where they are, protected by heavenly sentinels. Humanity is also called to live honorably, according to values that prevent chaos from erupting. The stars serve as a reminder to humanity that the human heart should conform to divine order in the same way that the heavens obey their guardians. Radiance emanates from the ninth heaven, which is the source of all light and permeates all of creation. This is the spiritual essence of illumination, truth, and divine presence, rather than just physical light. It represents how God's light shines through even the most obscure places, providing direction and hope to those who seek it. Instead of stumbling in ignorance, this vision symbolizes the possibility of enlightenment for humanity, the ability to see life as it really is. It is an exhortation to walk in truth and open one's eyes to wisdom, since light chases away fear. And shadow, the vision of the actual throne of glory, marks the culmination of the 10th heaven. Here, Enoch sees the ultimate reality, God enthroned in unfathomable brilliance amid unceasing worship. The voices of the angels fill the heavens with unending adoration as they bow in reverence. In this presence, Enoch undergoes a metamorphosis, going from being an earthly man to someone who has seen the divine. The journey's pinnacle, this last vision, is also its most symbolic. It demonstrates how humanity is also undergoing change and how a closer relationship with God transforms the soul into something beautiful. The throne of glory is more of a revelation than a destination. Seeing God transforms one forever. Even so, not everyone was receptive to these visions, despite their great spiritual value. Church authorities became suspicious of these teachings in later centuries, particularly because they seemed to divulge too much about the nature of divine order and the mysteries of heaven. The inflexible structures of human institutions, which favored the control of knowledge over its free dissemination, were challenged by the visions of rebellion, angelic governance, and cosmic guardianship. The Book of Enoch was suppressed in order to stifle truths that could enable people to see beyond human authority. The earthly church was undoubtedly not the ultimate arbiter of truth if heaven itself had levels of accountability, light, and governance. Ethiopia, however, kept this treasure intact. When other countries abandoned the Book of Enoch, Ethiopian tradition preserved it, preserving the chronicle of Enoch's ascent through the heavens, because it guaranteed that future generations would be able to rediscover the wisdom concealed in these visions. This preservation was not coincidental, but rather providential. The lessons of justice, order, obedience, and light, lessons that speak to both the most pressing issues of the modern era and to the struggles of the past, were once again made visible to humanity through Ethiopia's guardianship. The journey Through the 10 heavens is a spiritual map that leads us through the layers of existence that reflect the depths of the human soul, as well as the vastness of creation. It is not just a story about Enoch's ascent into the mysteries of the unseen. Every heaven unveils a different aspect of reality, revealing truths that we all too frequently fail to notice in day-to-day existence. The story serves as a reminder that nothing in the universe is random, nothing is purposeless, and everything is interconnected, from the first heaven with its winds and waters to the 10th with its throne of glory. The universe is full of meaning, and the visions given to Enoch are not limited to his era. They apply to all generations who want to know where we are in relation to eternity. We are reminded of balance, order, and divine control, even in the face of apparent unpredictability when we think of the first heaven, with its clouds, winds, and angelic forces that govern nature. Today, when storms rage both inside and outside of us, this lesson is still relevant. The first heaven tells us that giving in to divine order is the first step toward peace, that chaos is temporary, and that there is guidance hidden behind every whirlwind. A darker shadow is cast by the second heaven and its prison of fallen angels. It forewarns us about disobedience's heavy chains, blinding pride and rebellion. How many of us battle similar prisons, anger, bitterness, addictions and regrets in our own lives? The fallen angels serve as a metaphor for what occurs when light is abandoned, serving as a reminder that defiance of the truth results in bondage rather than freedom. This tension is heightened by the third heaven, which juxtaposes paradise and punishment. This vision is surprisingly applicable to our contemporary lives. We must make decisions every day that will either bring us happiness or sorrow. Happiness or sadness, light or dark, are not merely theoretical ideas. Rather, they are actualities that are influenced by the decisions we make. Humanity is reflected in the contrast between Eden's beauty and the fire of torment. Will we tend to the garden within or feed the flames of destruction? This idea of order is carried over into the fourth heaven, where the sun, moon, and stars all move in unison. Its lesson is timing, patience, and trust. The fourth heaven gently reminds us that time is God's, that life happens in seasons, and that we are called to live in rhythm rather than restless struggle in a world that is obsessed with speed, instant gratification, and control. By depicting the fallen angels in mourning, perpetually lamenting the glory they lost, the fifth heaven deepens the narrative of rebellion. Our own sense of regret is reflected in this vision. We are also aware of the consequences of making mistakes, the desire to go back in time, and the sadness of missed opportunities. However, as long as we have breath in our lungs, we still have the opportunity to be saved, unlike the fallen. We are cautioned by the grief of the fifth heaven not to continue to rebel until it is too late. The emphasis then moves to divine administration, the angelic order that keeps track of and controls every element of creation, including our spiritual journeys, health, and sustenance. We can rest easy knowing that we are not forgotten in this vision. Every tear, every hardship, every act of generosity is documented. Heaven itself pays attention, so our lives are more important than we realize. Enoch was overcome with awe as he got closer to the seventh heaven. The most powerful angels reside here close to the throne, and their radiant forms reflect God's presence. The seventh heaven serves as a lesson in humility for us. Being closer to the divine means being freed from illusions rather than being exalted. It serves as a reminder that reverence, surrender, and transformation, rather than arrogance, are the paths to the closest relationship with God. With its guardians of the stars, the eighth heaven serves as a reminder of the orderliness of the cosmos. Just as the stars faithfully shine in their designated locations, so too are humans called to live in accordance with their purpose. The universe affirms that if we live in accordance with divine law and submit to the guardianship of truth, order, and balance are achievable. Today's meaning is illuminated by the ninth heaven, which is the source of all light. The ninth heaven shows that light continues to flow into the universe at a time when so many people's minds are clouded by ignorance, confusion, and deceit. Light is clarity, hope, and truth. It provides guidance during the most difficult times. The ninth heaven is a promise that if we seek it, there is light for every soul lost in darkness. The journey culminates with the 10th, the throne of glory. Here, Enoch witnesses the unthinkable, God crowned in dazzling glory, surrounded by angels in unending adoration. Enoch is altered at that precise moment by the divine presence. To see God is to be made new, and to get close to him is to be filled with a light that no darkness can defeat. This is the ultimate lesson of the 10th heaven. When combined, the 10 heavens tell a grand tale of decisions, outcomes, and salvation. Both cosmic realities and human struggles are reflected in them. We struggle with chaos and order, obedience and disobedience, happiness and hopelessness. We are aware of the burden of regret, the desire for change, and the hunger for light. Since it is the tale of every soul yearning to transcend the boundaries of the earth and reach the eternal, Enoch's journey is not all that dissimilar from our own. However, these realities weren't always accepted. According to history, church authorities suppressed the Book of Enoch because they were afraid of how profound its revelations would be. Since knowledge is power, and these lessons have the potential to awaken people to see beyond earthly authority, they chose to conceal its visions. Ethiopia, however, kept the book intact, preserving a wisdom that is still relevant today. Because of this, we can now go back and study Enoch's journey, draw lessons from its symbolism, and allow its lessons to guide us in our contemporary lives. Think about how these heavens affect your own journey as you contemplate them. Like the winds of the first heaven, are you ensnared in storms? Like the shadows of the second, are you fighting against chains of rebellion? Like the third, are you at a fork in the road between fire and paradise? Or, as the fourth illustrates, do you just require a reminder of patience, order, and timing? If we are ready to listen, every heaven has something to teach us. This trip is for all of us, not just Enoch. And you are a part of this story, just as Enoch's visions were preserved for a period like this. I therefore extend an invitation to you to continue this exploration with me. Together, we can reach 10,000 subscribers and preserve this wisdom by sharing this message and subscribing to the channel. Please give the mission a super thank you if this work has touched you, and let's keep revealing secrets. Please leave your name, city, and time of viewing so that we can create a community that is bonded not only by curiosity, but also by faith, education, and exploration. Do not overlook the full 88-book Ethiopian Bible and the Book of Enoch if you wish to delve deeper. The link is in the description. In addition to being history, this holy compilation serves as a beacon for the present and a roadmap for the future. Grab it, read it, and allow its lessons to influence your path. Heaven is not just above us. It is within us, waiting to be found. As we come to an end, let these words stay in your heart like the last note of a song that reverberates long after the music has stopped. What if heaven is not just a shining kingdom above the clouds, but a vast expanse divided into 10 different realms, each one alive with mysteries beyond human imagination? Some filled with blinding rivers of fire and light, others guarded by angels with faces like lightning, and some so dark that even the bravest spirits tremble to pass through them. This question has haunted seekers for centuries. Is the afterlife a single paradise of eternal rest, or is it a layered reality where light and shadow coexist, where punishment and reward stand side by side? Throughout history, every culture has asked the same question in different ways. What happens when we die? Do we rise to something higher or sink into something lower? Religions around the world describe heaven as a home of peace and justice. But what if there was a man who claimed to have actually seen it, not in visions of poetry, but in journeys so detailed that he described the gates, the rivers, the mountains, and even the prisons hidden inside? That man was Enoch. Enoch is a name that appears briefly in the Bible, but his story expands far beyond those few verses. In the ancient Book of Enoch, which was revered for centuries and preserved in the Ethiopian Bible, he is described as the first human who walked with God so closely that he did not taste death. Instead, he was taken alive into the heavenly realms and shown secrets hidden even from angels. Unlike other prophets, Enoch wasn't only given words to deliver, he was given a tour of the very architecture of the cosmos. He was led by mighty beings into places where the souls of the righteous rest in light, and into caverns where the fallen are bound in chains. He was shown stars that move like soldiers under command, and thrones that blaze with living fire. The Book of Enoch is more than a vision. It's a map of heaven and the unseen world. It paints a picture so rich that it challenges the simple idea of heaven as one faraway kingdom. Instead, it shows a layered universe, filled with order, justice, and mysteries that even now stretch the imagination. This is why the Book of Enoch matters. It's not just another apocryphal text. It is one of the earliest attempts to describe heaven in detail, and it influenced later Jewish, Christian, and even Islamic thought. Early followers of Christ quoted from it. The Dead Sea Scrolls preserved parts of it, and the Ethiopian church never let it fade into obscurity. For us today, Enoch's story resonates deeply because we are still asking the same questions he asked thousands of years ago. What lies beyond the veil of death? Are we judged instantly, or do we travel through realms? Why does evil seem so strong in this world, and will it ever be punished? Enoch's visions speak to these questions in ways that are both terrifying and comforting. His description of heaven is not only a promise of reward for the righteous, but also a warning of justice for the wicked. Imagine hearing, in a time when people feared the unknown after death, that someone had already walked those roads, seen the waiting places of souls, and stood before the throne of the Eternal One. That is what makes the Book of Enoch powerful. It bridges the human longing for answers with divine revelation. When you read it, you feel like the curtain of the universe is pulled back, just enough for you to glimpse a light that burns brighter than the sun. And this is where our journey begins. Together we will walk through Enoch's visions, one realm at a time. We will see the beauty of heaven, the terror of the prisons, the songs of the angels, and the trembling of the fallen. But before we step into those realms, pause and think. If heaven is truly layered, if there are places of rest and places of judgment, then what does that mean for us now? Does it change the way we live? Does it change the way we think about justice, love, and eternity? This documentary is not just about ancient texts. It's about the oldest human questions. Where do we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? And perhaps most haunting of all, what awaits us when we take our final breath? Now, before we dive deeper into Enoch's heavenly visions, I want to pause and invite you to support this journey. If you are drawn to the wisdom hidden in these ancient scriptures, subscribe to Bible Says right now and help us reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. Your support keeps these stories alive and brings hidden truths back into the light. If you feel moved, consider sending us super thanks. It's a way to keep this work going and to help us share these forgotten books with the world. I'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment with your name, your city, and the time you're watching this. Let's see how far around the world Enoch's vision travels today. And if you want to go deeper yourself, check out the description below. You'll find a link to the complete Bible with 88 books, including the Book of Enoch in English translation. It's a treasure of knowledge, preserved through time, waiting for you to read with your own eyes. The gates of heaven, as seen by Enoch, are about to open before us. Stay with me, because its words are so bold and clear that they unsettled religious leaders who wanted to control the story of heaven and earth. The Book of Enoch has always been associated with mystery and controversy. Most Christians in the West are raised with a Bible that has 66 books, and they are unaware that more was preserved in earlier traditions. The Book of Enoch, one of the 88 books that still make up the Ethiopian Bible, is a work that fundamentally alters our understanding of angels, judgment, and the universe's structure. Why then was it omitted from the Bibles that the majority of people today are familiar with? The answer starts in the centuries when the early church was choosing which texts would serve as the foundation of its authority, and it is both political and spiritual. The Book of Enoch was known to the first Christians. Indeed, some of them treated it as scripture and openly quoted from it. For instance, Enoch is directly cited in the New Testament epistle of Jude, which alludes to his prophecy that the Lord would arrive with thousands of his holy ones to carry out judgment on everyone. That passage is taken directly from Enoch and is not found in Genesis, Exodus, or the Psalms. Its spiritual power was acknowledged by early church fathers like Tertullian and Clement of Alexandria, who also discussed it. However, as the church developed into an organization, its leaders had to decide what was too risky and what should be included in the canon. Why was Enoch dangerous? Its pages go into great detail about the angels' rebellion, how supernatural beings corrupted humanity, and the judgment that awaited both heavenly powers and humans. By portraying humanity's struggle as a matter of sin, repentance, and forgiveness, the Western Church attempted to simplify the creation and salvation narrative. Enoch added complexity to that story by exposing a cosmic conflict between angels and demons, demonstrating that human suffering was caused by fallen spirits who tainted the world with knowledge that was forbidden, in addition to Adam's fall. The Book of Enoch brought up issues that were too challenging for bishops and councils to handle, while attempting to keep things cohesive and under control. Christianity, meanwhile, took a different course in Ethiopia. Enoch was never abandoned by the Ethiopian Church, one of the world's oldest Christian communities. Because they believed it to be a part of the original testimony of faith, they preserved it in their sacred texts. Enoch was a witness to them, not a threat. It disclosed facts about the invisible world that corresponded with the conflicts between good and evil that they had encountered in their own past. Ethiopia preserved Enoch like a treasure, passing it down through the ages, while Western Christianity erased it from popular knowledge. Because of this, Ethiopian believers are still able to open their Bibles and read the entirety of Enoch's visions, whereas most people only hear a faint echo of his story when they hear his name today. Enoch's exclusion from the Western canon was not a singular incident. Many books were contested or disregarded during the church councils that defined orthodoxy in the centuries following Christ. Enoch, however, was different. It was rejected because it had both age and influence, not because it lacked either. It had once been treasured by the Jewish community and worshipped by early Christians, but by the time the canon was decided in Rome, its value had diminished. Its depictions of angels instructing people in weapons, magic, and secret sciences sounded too much like myths that the church wished to suppress. Leaders were concerned that if Enoch was included, Christianity would come across as too paganism-like or too susceptible to superstitious charges. They made the story simpler by taking it out. However, in the process of simplifying, they also removed a layer of cosmic struggle that previously provided believers with a more comprehensive understanding of the reasons behind the world's suffering. Ironically, echoes of the book persisted even after the Western Church abandoned Enoch. Its themes influenced the imagination of both Jews and Christians, and writers and academics kept referring to it and studying it. Many of Jesus's listeners would have been familiar with concepts from Enoch when he discussed angels, judgment, or the coming kingdom. His references to heavenly hosts, parables about judgment, and warning about eternal fire ready for the devil and his angels all ring true with imagery that Enoch had previously vividly detailed. It would not have sounded strange to the early Christians to hear Christ discuss these realities. It would have sounded like an extension of a tale they were already familiar with. Enoch's fingerprints can even be found in the New Testament itself. The Book of Revelation's imagery, which includes angels, trumpets, bowls of wrath, and visions of heaven, is reminiscent of Enoch's travels. Enoch's depictions of fallen creatures and their impact on the world also align well with the Apostle Paul's teachings regarding the principalities and powers that govern in heavenly realms. This link implies that even though Enoch was officially disregarded, the Christian imagination never really let it go. Long after it was taken out of the canon, it influenced how believers viewed heaven, hell, and the afterlife. Therefore, the question is not only why Enoch was excommunicated by the Western Church, but also what was lost in the process. Without it, the Bible shrank in size, and the narrative of humanity's fight against evil became more limited to earthly sin. It gives the story a broader scope, reaching into the heavens and demonstrating how humans are a part of a cosmic conflict, involving angels, demons, and the very fabric of creation. Ethiopia preserved this, which is why the Book of Enoch is still relevant today. If Enoch had stayed in the Western canon, just think of how Christianity might have changed. It's possible that believers would have felt more connected to the spiritual realm, understood why the earth is both beautiful and corrupt, and had a stronger bond with the ancient religion that united heaven and earth. Rather, the book was concealed, discussed in whispers, or handled as an object of curiosity. It has only recently started to reappear as researchers, seekers, and believers alike return to it for understanding. It is no coincidence that Enoch survived in the Ethiopian Bible. It serves as a reminder that some facts cannot be changed, regardless of how many councils discuss them or how many leaders attempt to censor them. They stay, awaiting the time when readers will be prepared to reread them. When contemporary readers revisit Enoch, they discover not only an archaic fascination, but also a vision that continues to address issues of justice, judgment, and hope. Humans have always wondered what is out there in the sky. Our ancestors believed that the sky was more than just a ceiling of clouds because of the stars, the changing hues of dawn and dusk, the sun's blazing power, and the moon's quiet authority. It was a doorway to them. One of the earliest societies to observe the heavens mathematically was the ancient Mesopotamians, who held that the sky was composed of layers, each of which was governed by a distinct god or spirit. They pictured the heavens as a series of stacked realms, the highest of which was inaccessible